All right, let's talk one last time about this Nico situation at Tennessee, and then hopefully we can move on from it. But I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the whole thing, what went down, what I think about what Nico did, what Tennessee did, the ramifications from this, what's going to happen going forward as a result of this, not just to Nico in Tennessee, but in college football as a whole. And then we're going to circle around to something we've talked about a lot over the last couple of years, which is what, if anything, can be done top down in the world of college football to prevent or curtail or rein in or regulate or whatever some of these things that are going on in college football. Now, there's different aspects at play here, but they're all sort of interconnected. So let's start with the Nico Tennessee thing. This is a rare instance in college football where almost the entire college football world is aligned on one side of a divisive issue. The issue being, NIL, players' rights versus, what a school should do or can afford to do. And in a lot of cases, we would see the school kind of cave here and maybe give in. And Tennessee, of course, didn't do that. And it is almost a unanimous response from the college football public that they are Team Tennessee in this particular instance. It feels like a lot of us as college football fans have sort of been waiting for somebody, a school, a coach, an administration, somebody from the NCAA to sort of put their foot down and say no to the player. And from most accounts, that's what has happened here with Tennessee and Nico. Now, there is a report out today that Nico is actually the one that left Tennessee. The initial reports the day of the spring game were that sort of Tennessee told Nico, we don't want you. We're not paying that money. Go enter the portal. Report out today suggests that Nico actually informed the offensive coordinator Friday night that he was entering the portal. Look, there's a lot of trying to save face going on here, I think, on both sides. I don't think Tennessee wanted to be in this position. Obviously, they didn't want to be in this position. And even though we all think they sort of did the right thing and pushed Nico into the portal instead of sort of caving to the demands, if that's what happened, we don't really know that that's what happened, I guess. Maybe Nico did inform the offensive coordinator. It was confirmed that there was a dinner Friday night, Thursday night, the night before that Friday practice that Nico skipped with the offensive coordinator and Nico. That report came out Thursday, Friday. Didn't find out till today that apparently Nico informed the offensive coordinator at that dinner that he was entering the portal. Again, we don't know if that's true or not. There's Nico comes out looking bad here. Whether, it's Nico's fault, his dad's fault, some kind of agent's fault, whatever it is, as far as perception goes here, Nico comes out kind of looking like the bad guy. So, maybe they put this out that, hey, it didn't really go down this way. We just decided to enter the portal. We told the team that. We weren't sort of blackmailing them for more money. We told them we're in the portal. I don't know how many people believe that. But in any case, Nico is no longer with Tennessee. And, I think Nico comes out looking bad here. Tennessee, although I think they come out looking better, having been the one that sort of put their foot down and sort of stood up for college football and say, we're not going to be held hostage here by one player. We've got 105 players on this team. We're not going to be held hostage by any individual player. Heupel made the statement, the power T is greater than any individual on this team. And he included himself in that. He said, I'm not bigger than the T. No player on the team is bigger than the T. I had put out a tweet Friday morning when it was reported that Nico missed practice. I put a tweet out, root for the logo on the side of your team's helmet, not the name on the back of some individual player's jersey. And it's sad that you kind of it's come to the point where you kind of have to choose that. Because that's not how it didn't used to be that way. Every fan has had favorite players on whatever team you're a fan of, right? And they're not always superstars. They're not always All-Americans. They don't always go on to have NFL careers. But for whatever reason, maybe you just Rodrigo Blankenship at Georgia. He floated around the NFL for a while. He's out of the NFL now. He's in whatever this new USFL thing is or whatever the latest spring football league is. But he's one of my all-time favorite Georgia players. Now, in his case, he sort of came through right before the NIL and transfer portal era. So fortunately, he was at Georgia for his entire career. But the point I'm making is it's becoming harder and harder to do that in college football. I can remember when my son was really little. Every year, he would have a favorite player on Georgia's team. And in his case, he was too young to really understand a lot of college football, but he was, so maybe he saw somebody score a touchdown. And so, that's my favorite player. I'd go get him the jersey of that player and that kind of thing. And you can still do that. But it used to be if your favorite player was a freshman or a sophomore, you got to keep wearing that jersey for another couple of years, or your kid got to keep wearing that jersey for another couple of years. The reality is now you can go buy a jersey today and it's meaningless tomorrow. They're playing for a different team. And it's sad that it's come to that. But that's what it's come to. What can be done to fix it? What is going to come of this Nico situation? Let's start there. I think there's a lot of other coaches and programs around the country, number one, that are dealing with these same things. That's number one. We can't act like this is something specific to Nico in Tennessee. Now, some of the exact details, exactly how it went down, yeah, that may be unique to this particular situation. But the idea that there aren't players all over the country on various teams that are having their agents or their parents or maybe it's even themselves meet with coaches at different points during the year, whether it's the end of the regular season, whether it's the first transfer portal window, whether it's now, whether it's next week when the portal window opens again, and saying, hey, I'm making this. I think I deserve this. Like that is going on at a lot of other places. Exactly how it got to the point at Tennessee where information was being leaked and obviously it was just a toxic situation there in terms of the negotiations. Whoever it was that was negotiating on behalf of Nico, and we've all seen the same reports. Was it Nico? Was it his dad? Was it an agent? Was it a combination of the three? Whatever it was that was going on, the negotiations became toxic and this information got released. That doesn't mean this is only happening at Tennessee. It's happening other places. So I think a lot of these other coaches, programs, administrators, athletic directors, conference commissioners even are looking around at the reaction of this Nico versus Tennessee thing. They're gauging the reaction and they're going, we could probably get away with doing this too. And I say get away with like it's like they're doing something wrong. They're not. What I mean is, the next team that has a scenario similar to this has what has happened in the Tennessee situation to sort of gauge what their fan base's reaction might be. Now, that means we have to be prepared as a fan base to watch our starting quarterback walk out the door at the end of spring practice or at whatever time, as opposed to caving in and giving him a ton of money at the expense of every other player on the team. Because let's not forget here, these schools do not have unlimited money, whether you're talking about the schools themselves or the donors and the collectives and all that. The amounts of money that we see mentioned sometimes compared to the amounts of money that average idiots like me and you are used to dealing with, it seems so astronomical that in our minds sometimes it's almost an unlimited supply. But it's really not. Every dollar that your team gives to a quarterback or a running back or a wide receiver or whoever it is a dollar less that they have to give to someone else, either already on the team or a portal addition or the next 4 or 5-star high school recruit. It is not an unlimited supply of money that these teams are working with. And so, these coaches look around, they see what happened here with the Tennessee situation, sort of the way the fans have reacted, both the Tennessee fans and the college football sort of public at large. And they go, you know what? It might be easier for us to make this type of decision in the future based on the reaction we've seen to this particular scenario here. Now, what, if anything, at any point in the future, is going to stop some of this, prevent some of this, slow some of this down, put a cap on this, whatever you want to say it. These players are going to have to become employees. That's really the only That's the only way. There is no other way. Any other way, any other attempt made by either schools, conferences, or the NCAA as a whole to curtail, limit, regulate any of this NIL is just going to be thrown out in a lawsuit. That's just what's been proven over the last 3 or 4 years. Every single lawsuit that has gone to trial or that has reached a decision has ruled against the legality of what the schools and the NCAA were doing to limit players' abilities to do things like transfer, earn money off their name, all of those kinds of things. So the idea that the SEC or the Big Ten or whoever else individually amongst their conferences or the NCAA as a whole is going to just all of a sudden institute some sort of NIL cap or regulation or transfer limits or rule, that's just a pipe dream. It's just not going to happen. They have tried all of those things. And this is a common misconception that I see a lot from college football fans. This idea that, the NCAA didn't do anything to regulate transfers or NIL. They didn't make any rules, so now it's just a wild, wild west. Well, they tried. Now, you can tell me that their efforts were poor. They didn't try hard enough. They didn't put the right rules in place. They didn't do it quick enough. All of that is fair argument. But this idea that the NCAA just didn't do anything at all, or didn't try to do anything at all, is ridiculous. They did try. That's where we got all these lawsuits from that you constantly hear about. Speaking of lawsuits, Tennessee right now has become a victim of a problem they helped create. And there's no way around that. And it's not all Tennessee's fault, because had Tennessee not been the one to instigate this, it would have happened eventually. Someone else would have done it, another school, another state, whatever. But you remember the lawsuit that Tennessee filed against the NCAA a few years ago? If you don't remember, the NCAA started investigating Tennessee for their recruitment of Nico. Nico was basically given financial inducements as a high school player to attend Tennessee. Now, this has been against NCAA rules since the dawn of time. And when I say financial inducements, I'm talking about giving a senior in high school $1, $100, $1 million, or giving him things of value, financial inducements. They were flying Nico all over the country. Tennessee was. Well, I say Tennessee. Tennessee, the school, is hiding behind Spire Sports, which was, I guess, their collective or whatever it was. None of us, I don't think, are naive enough anymore to believe that these collectives are operating separately from the athletic departments. Come on. The idea that Tennessee wasn't facilitating these trips for Nico when he was in high school and just using the collective or Spire Sports to actually do the taxiing around with the private planes. Come on. Anyway, so it's been against the rules since the dawn of time to provide any type of financial inducements to high school kids. But of course, we all know Tennessee sort of broke the mold on this NIL to high school kids ceiling when they gave Nico an $8 million deal while he was still a senior in high school. The guy was not enrolled at Tennessee. He had never practiced or played a snap at Tennessee, and they gave him $8 million. It was huge news at the time. We had never seen anything like it with Nico, or we'd never seen anything like it with anybody. And Tennessee goes out and does this with Nico. Plane rides and financial incentives while he was still a senior in high school, hiding behind the sort of fake wall of NIL, and then giving him $8 million to come to Tennessee. Fast forward a year or two later, the NCAA starts investigating Tennessee's recruitment of Nico. What did Tennessee do in response? The state of Tennessee sued the NCAA. Now, this is an important distinction here that a lot of Tennessee fans in particular, maybe there's some others out there too, still get wrong. Tennessee won that lawsuit. The state of Tennessee won their lawsuit against the NCAA. It wasn't a lawsuit about whether or not Tennessee cheated. It wasn't a lawsuit about whether or not Tennessee broke a rule. It wasn't a lawsuit about whether or not Tennessee provided financial incentives to Nico when he was a senior in high school. The lawsuit was not about any of those things. What was the lawsuit about? The state of Tennessee claimed in that lawsuit that the NCAA had no right to enforce their rules. Not that there wasn't a rule, because that's what you hear Tennessee fans say all the time about the recruitment of Nico. Well, there was no rule against it. Yes, there was a rule against it. And Tennessee in the lawsuit didn't even argue that there wasn't a rule against it. They didn't even make that argument. They didn't make the argument that Tennessee didn't break the rule. The only argument that Tennessee made in their case against the NCAA in federal court was that the NCAA had no right to enforce its NIL rules. And the federal court agreed. Why? Because they're not employees. Because they're not employees. It's that simple. And every lawsuit that has come around lately, whether it's NIL, transfer portal, whatever, the NCAA is losing, and the reason is the same every time. You can't restrict these players in this way because they're not employees. You can't tell a kid he can't transfer because he's not an employee. You can't cap what he can make in NIL or any other way because he's not an employee. So every lawsuit, the NCAA loses. So Tennessee created, in a way, helped to create the monster that this all has become and has cost them their starting quarterback now, Nico. The NCAA's inability to enforce its rules, and I say inability, they were never great at enforcing rules to begin with. I'm not here to take up for the NCAA. The NCAA has made a million mistakes. I just want to clear up the record that the NCAA didn't do anything or didn't try to do anything at all. They did. And at every turn, they were hit with a lawsuit. This is just one example here of the state of Tennessee suing them and winning, saying that you might have had this rule, and what we did might have been against the rule, but you don't have any right to enforce that rule. And a federal court agreed because the player, specifically in this case, Nico's not an employee. You can't tell him what he can do. He doesn't work for you. He's a student. You can't have these rules. We've talked about this a million times when it comes to the comparison between college football and where it's headed and where the NFL is right now. The NFL has a lot of these rules in place. Why is it illegal for the NCAA to enforce these rules on college football players, but it's legal for the NFL to enforce some of the exact same rules on its players? It's because the NFL players are employees and they collectively bargain and they agree in that collective bargaining agreement to the free agency rules, the salary cap rules, all of those things. They're all collectively bargained and agreed to by the Players Association and the owners, and that's what they operate under. And because they do that, the federal government carves out an antitrust exemption for the NFL and its teams and its players. And until that same thing happens in college football, nothing is going to fix any of these problems. There's a rule in the SEC right now that has come up a lot over the last couple of days. During this spring portal window that opens next week, you can't transfer from one SEC school to another SEC school. That's not an NCAA rule. That's an SEC rule. Okay? It's an SEC rule. So Nico at Tennessee. Let's say Auburn wanted him or whatever, fill in the blank SEC team wanted Nico. Right now, according to SEC rules, Nico can't transfer to that SEC school. If he does, he has to sit out a year. And then he could play in 2026. If he transfers to another conference, the SEC has no say-so over what some other conference does. So if he transfers to the Big Ten, he can play, right? As soon as somebody sues the SEC about that rule will be gone. I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, but it will at some point. And if Nico wants to be the one to do it, Nico will win that lawsuit, and Nico would then be able to transfer to another SEC school and play right away, because the federal court is going to say, you can't force this kid not to go to whatever school he wants in the SEC and then tell him he can't play. He doesn't work for you. He's not an employee. He's a student athlete. They're using the NCAA's own 50-year-old argument against them. You know, the NCAA been clinging on to this student athlete deal for what seems like a lifetime, and now the federal courts are going, hey, a student athlete, remember? You can't. So anyway, that's where it's headed. I'm glad Tennessee did what they did. I think we've all been kind of waiting on somebody to sort of call a player's bluff in one of these scenarios and situations. Tennessee did it. The entire college football world seems aligned behind Tennessee and Josh Heupel and the administration in that decision. Nico's got a right to seek as much money as he wants. He's got a right to ask for more money. But when you start doing things like holding out a practice, and threatening to enter the portal in the last week of spring practice and things like that, as much as Nico has a right to do that, Tennessee's got just as much right to say, okay, go, bye. And that's what they did. And I think on some level, we were all kind of happy to see that. What's going to change? What's going to fix any of this? First of all, nothing is going to fix every problem. Any solution they come up with, including making the players employees and allowing them to collectively bargain, and earning an anti-federal or a federal antitrust exemption from the federal government, that will solve a lot of the problems we have now. It won't solve them all. And just like anything else, it will probably create some new problems that would then have to be solved. So I'm not pretending there's some sort of snap your fingers easy fix to all of this stuff that's going on in college football. But I do think that's where we're headed. I've been saying that for a couple of years. It's sort of, where the destination is. You just don't know how long it's going to take to get there. It would be like if everybody uses GPS when they travel, right? When you drive, go on vacation, drive somewhere or whatever, right? You put it knows where you are. You tell it where you want to go. And it tells you, number one, how to get there. And number two, tells you how long it'll take, right? Well, this is like GPS without the time estimate. I know where we're headed. We're headed to these college players being employees. I'm punching that in the GPS. This is where we're going. This is the destination. College players are going to be employees, but it doesn't tell you how long it's going to take to get there. You just got to start heading that direction, and you get there when you get there. Anyway, long drawn out video about Nico and the Tennessee situation. Another misconception out there real quick before we wrap up. This does not make Tennessee better for 2025. It doesn't. This is not some kind of massive win for Tennessee, the school. Tennessee has spent the last 6 months preparing for the 2025 season, thinking that Nico would be their starting quarterback. Every play they've drawn up, every scheme they've worked on, everything they have done offensively as a coaching staff and as a team for the last 6 months has been geared towards the idea that Nico will be their starting quarterback in 2025. So the idea that he's gone now, in no way makes Tennessee a better team in 2025. That's not to say that one of the backups can't be a good quarterback and can't have a successful season, but it's not a positive to lose your starting quarterback in the middle of April. It's just not. A returning quarterback, a 5-star out of high school, didn't have a great year last year, pretty average year, but you would assume a little bit better in year 2 as a starter, and you're basically now starting over with a new starting quarterback. Portal opens next week. Well, is Tennessee going to go grab somebody out of the portal? Well, right now there's nobody in the portal that would be better than what they have on their current roster. Is there a quarterback somewhere that's going to enter the portal next week, specifically planning to then transfer to Tennessee? We'll find that out next week, and then we can decide if we think that quarterback's a better fit at Tennessee than Nico would have been, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my thoughts, long and drawn out. Appreciate you watching. Hit the thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next video. Have a good morning.